there might be 3 tiers in the first 3 players in these rankings. Brock Bowers is number 1 on an island by himself.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a top 5 pick in startup drafts. Trey McBride is number 2 on an island by himself, maybe a first-round pick in a startup draft.
Yeah.
Sam Laporta is a clear number 3. I don't think we could debate anything about that. And then it gets a little bit questionable. I would put Mark Andrews, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson kind of all into one little bubble. And then I'm not sure there's another tight end that I want to roster in Dynasty, but the back half of my top 12, Dalton Kincaid, Tucker Kraft, Kyle Pitts, yes, somehow still, David Njoku, Travis Kelce, at least until February 15th, and Jatavian Sanders. Woof. Like, have you ever seen a graphic? Because you think most leagues are 12-team leagues, right? That illustrates the haves and the have-nots more than this one right here. If you're in a dynasty league and you have one of the guys on the left, you have life. If you have one of the guys on the right, well, thank you, Travis Kelce, for the championship this week that turned back the clock for one game. I believe you will do it for the next 3 games. But if you have one of the guys on the right, you're almost drawing dead.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you. It's funny. This was supposed to be the year of the tight end, Heath. As far as dynasty startups go, because I can apply this to redraft, I've made it clear to myself, and I told Jacob this last week, I will not, and I repeat, I will not fall for this trap again in drafts next year. I will not be using a mid-round pick, 4th round, 4, 5, 6 on the next guy at tight end when I could be getting a James Conner, or I could be getting a Brian Robinson, or one of these backs that can actually help me win, or receiver. So I've done that in Dynasty. You know, I'll still fall for the trap because I do like watching tape, and I love Kincaid's tape, right? Like, I have guys that I love on tape. Luke Musgrave, who has been injured and hasn't hit. Tucker Kraft had great tape at South Dakota State as well. So I'll probably fall for that trap again, Heath, but you're right. It's an interesting position in Dynasty. We have, I would even say, less so than like the left versus the right here. It's really like those top 3. And I'd honestly even argue just the top 2 are separated so far above any other position we just went over, Bowers and McBride. I don't feel great about Laporta. I guess I'm okay with it. And then we're at guys already like Andrews, Kittle, and Hawkinson, who are older, right? Especially Kittle and Andrews. And so we're already kind of losing some steam there, it feels like.
Yeah, I don't know if Gibbs told you this on one. I know you guys do a lot of podcasts together, and I know I really kind of ruffled his feathers a little bit in our tight end premium league when I tried to trade for Dalton Kincaid at a discount, and he basically called it an insulting offer.
That's
and and so we had a little back and forth because I get kind of annoyed when somebody says it's an insulting offer. And he said, this season would have gone different if I'd just taken Trey McBride there. I said, yeah, Trey McBride's good. Like, what? You said you like the tape for Dalton Kincaid.
This college tape. Let me make that clear.
The college tape.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't make me feel near as good. I thought you were going to give me some things from his play in the NFL to make me feel good about the fact that he just turned 75 targets into 448 yards.
So bad. No, it's what you said. It's the college tape where I was excited about him, and it's how I thought he'd be used at the NFL level based on how he won at the college level. He just isn't used that way at all in this Buffalo scheme, and they're not going to make a change at coordinator, and they shouldn't because this offense works. So for me, like, if this is how he's going to be used at the NFL level, I'm sure there'll be some evolution, right? They've invested in him, but I don't know. And if this is how he's used, I'm just not as excited as I used to be about him. I still want to buy into the talent, though, Heath. I don't want to rule someone out after 2 years based on, look, when he was in college, he was essentially their big slot receiver, and he was essentially their entire offense. That's what had me so excited about him. He won underneath over and over and over again, kind of similar to how we see Trey McBride win, to be completely honest. Only Kincaid didn't join an offense that's going to use him like the Arizona Cardinals use Trey McBride. He joined a completely different scheme, and that matters. So it's just, I don't want to jump off this yet, but it's tough given like how Buffalo uses him.
Dalton Kincaid had 6 different games this year where he had 7 or more targets. That's pretty good for a tight end, right?
Right.
He did not reach 60 receiving yards once in any of those games.
That's really bad. I
don't understand it, but enough of that, because I agree. Like, people are asking in the chat, like, I don't want to just move on from Kincaid. No, you can't.
No.
It's sunk cost. Just hold on and hope that next year is better, because he is with Josh Allen. But
Yeah.
more pressing, please, for tomorrow's article, give me anybody else to rank at tight end 12 that's not named Jatavian Sanders.
Well, I would say this. I got some deeper dives, but for me, Evan Ingram should be in the top 12 on this list, just given his contract situation. Trevor Lawrence coming back and the rapport he built with Lawrence. So he would be probably someone I would put in there over Jatavian Sanders. But for, lesser veteran type plays, I got two. The first would be Jonnu Smith. I mean, look, I don't know what's going to happen with Jonnu this offseason, but Jonnu looks pretty damn good on the football field. And he moves incredibly well after the catch, and he's proven he can be a weapon for fantasy this year and for the Dolphins. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him come back there on a team friendly-ish deal, or, giving him a nod, like, we'll pay you a little bit more than you've been making in your NFL career. So he's one. And then for the deepest dive, Heath, this is the one that's most interesting to me, Isaiah Likely. So the reason I like this is Likely has been a phenomenal talent on the football field and great on a per touch basis, just isn't involved a lot, right? Well, Mark Andrews' contract is up after this next season, and they've got a lot of guys they have to pay, the Baltimore Ravens. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them move on from Andrews after his contract runs up. And now you have a guy in Likely who you could get really cheap, who will still be under contract, I believe, at that point, maybe in his final year, and then could have that breakout year.
So Jonnu, I considered, and I just have a philosophical rule. He's my tight end 19. I have a philosophical rule that if a guy has a career year at age 29 or age 30, I don't buy it. Right? I'm not going to buy it for the next year. And sometimes those guys do it again. But I'm not going to buy it. So I understand why, if you want to buy it, though, makes perfect sense. Isaiah Likely is actually my number 13 tight end. So he was the guy who was closest. I think I'm going to take that suggestion, Dan. And when the article comes out, Isaiah Likely will be tight end 12. And I'm just going to clip.
No love for Evan Ingram.
No love at all for Evan Ingram, who will turn 31 before he plays another football game.
That's fair.
Has averaged fewer than 7 yards per target in 5 of his last 6 seasons. Has not scored more than 4 touchdowns in a year since 2017.
Ooh.
And looking at the contract, he does have $13 million worth of dead money on the cap for next year. So they're probably going to keep him, but they would save $7 million by cutting him. And he has a $19 million cup hit.
Yeah. And Strange has looked pretty good behind him, and they drafted him. So, all great points. I would move him back off that list.
So I've made a couple references to Travis Kelce winning the Super Bowl and then retiring, but let's say maybe the Chiefs lose somehow and Travis Kelce doesn't retire. If he announces he's returning for the 2025 season, how much higher should I have him? He's currently my tight end 11.
First of all, hearing the name Travis Kelce gives me shell shock, because I went against my grain and I went against my rule of sticking to the process, keeping my picks, even though I'm a contender. And I traded you my first round pick for Kelce and Connor. And I just immediately regret that. I didn't win the league. I got screwed. Jalen Hurts got hurt. And now I'm looking at it like, was it worth it? No, it was not worth it. I want that first round pick back. Thank God I didn't give you Brian Thomas for those guys. That was your original offer. That was never happening. And you're like, the chat told you that you should make this trade.
The chat did.
Guess what? I'm glad I didn't listen to the chat, because if I had traded Brian Thomas,
who was that?
If I had traded Brian, the chat said this is a ripoff for Dan. He's got to do it. If I had traded Brian Thomas for Travis Kelce and James Conner, I might just quit the league out of shame at this point. But let me just start by saying that. As far as your question goes, though, with regards to Travis Kelce, how much higher would I rank him? Like, not that much higher, Heath. I think what ended up happening this year is what you predicted would happen, and a lot of people who were closer to the Chiefs situation predicted, and I was wrong on, which is they're not really using him until the playoffs. I'm going to watch, and I'm going to see, and if he looks like old Travis Kelce in the playoffs this year, just like last year, I'm going to be like, this is a plan. They are doing something like specifically to keep him healthy for these playoff runs. So for me, I'm kind of out on Kelce now for good.
And there was that stretch when they lost Rice and they hadn't added Hopkins yet, and Worthy wasn't quite ready, where he did have week 5, 70 yards, week 7, 90 yards, week 8, 100 yards. Like,
Right.
He had a little stretch, and then he stepped up for all of us in the fantasy championship, scoring 22 fantasy points against the Steelers of all teams. So I do think he still has it. I think you were right about that. It's just, I mean, how exciting is it to think about the fact that Patrick Mahomes might have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy at full speed heading into next year?
And they might get it. I would do it if I were him. He's a free agent, I believe, but Hollywood Brown signing on a team-friendly deal just to revalue. Like, he doesn't have value heading into free agency. If he does 1 year with Mahomes, he could get value for that next year heading into free agency.